Now, from education to business and economy, technology, the youth, health and family, it's time for us to engage energy and climate adaptation. OJ Okudiri Uzo, Senior Executive Vertex Energy, is going to be moderating this panel. And he is a professional engineer of Alberta, Canada, a project management professional with 29 years experience in the oil and gas industry, locally, that is, not just at home, but abroad. His oil and gas experience spans many global oil and gas basins, including the Gulf of Mexico, Brazil Santos Basin, the Western Canada Basin, Niger Delta, and shallow water Tanu Basin, Ghana. He was a front-end project manager for a major deep water project in Shell, Nigeria, vice president technical in Erin Energy, Houston. Mr. Uzo obtained a master's degree in petroleum engineering from the University of Houston. Everything he is, a passionate at heart for national transformation and impacting the youth of Nigeria wherever they are through Diaspora connection. Over to you, OJ, and welcome to the platform.
Thank you very much, Dio. Thank you for that colorful introduction.
It's yours, it's your color.
And thank you also for the Apostles in the Marketplace for the opportunity to moderate this session. You know, we just want to appreciate God for this platform, for nation building, for bringing the fear of the Lord and ethics to the marketplace. And so it's really an opportunity that is provided through this, the medium that we have to be able to rub minds together and see how we can move Nigeria forward. I reflected a little bit on the theme of this year's nation building workshop, and I was led to the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1 to 2. And I think this is very instructive for those who are in the diaspora, as well as those who are within. Nehemiah was positioned to be at a place where he could be of help to rebuild Jerusalem at the time. And when he received the information from those that visited from Judah, the Bible says things are not going well for those who return to the province of Judah, and they are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem have been torn down, the gates have been destroyed by fire. And what did Nehemiah do? The Bible says that Nehemiah wept, he mourned, he fasted, and he prayed to the God of heaven. But he didn't stop there. Nehemiah also arose, got permission, got materials to rebuild the wall. Despite the opposition, the Sanballat, the Tobiah, the Geshem, all the people that tried to stop him, it didn't stop him from going forward to rebuild the wall, because he saw that as a role and an assignment and as a responsibility that he had as a child of God. And so I think what that says is that for all of us, we not only have the responsibility to fast, to pray as we are commanded, but we must arise and rebuild Nigeria. That we do for God, that we do for Nigeria, but that's also what we do for our children. What are we going to bequeath? A broken system, an ineffective system? And so we want to be able to come up with something that by the time it's time for us to depart, we'll be glad that we contributed. The Lord says that unless the Lord builds the house, the labor that builds it is in vain. And so let's just submit ourselves as we start this segment to the Lord God Almighty and say, Lord, use us. You are looking for people to use. We submit ourselves to be used. Use us for your glory. Use us to exalt Nigeria. Use us to create a Nigeria that all Nigerians will be proud of. Use us, Lord Jehovah, to make Nigeria to contribute to the community of nations. As the word of God says, Lord, establish the work of our hands in Jesus' mighty name. I just want to use this opportunity to welcome everyone to this segment on national energy crisis, the energy transition, and climate stewardship. And I also want to thank everyone who is logged on right now for investing that time with us today and for being part of the solution. Because, we can discuss the problem, but, we at some point needs to be part of the solution. And that's what this is all about. Again, my name is OJ Uzo. And today, courtesy of the Apostles in the Marketplace, the panelists are very distinguished gentlemen and women that have invested greatly in trying to find solutions to the challenges that we face in the energy sector, especially with domestic energy supply. And so today, we will have the privilege of trying to learn from their experience, trying to learn from what they've been doing. And so I'm going to start with that introduction. Is really an honor to be the one moderating this with this very distinguished gentleman on the panel today. And so starting with Dr. Khosrow Nematolahai, he's known popularly as Dr. Nema, and he has many lives. He lives in many worlds. He's an academic, a researcher, and an entrepreneur. Dr. Nema is chairman of 2 advanced technology companies, computer-aided engineering, that's focused on finite element analysis and computational fluid dynamics, and also the chairman of Advanced Renewable Power. He received his PhD in structural mechanics and civil engineering in Purdue University, and he's been an associate faculty in that department. But also, he received an outstanding faculty award in 2014 and has 3 patents also in advanced armors. His research area is in thermal management systems development for electric vehicles, batteries, and grid energy storage systems in collaboration with other companies. And so we welcome you today to the panel, Dr. Nema.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
The next person I'm going to introduce is a person who is very well known in the continent because he's so much invested in trying to turn Nigeria and the continent around. And his name is Dr. Webe Boa. He's the chief executive of All On. And I assume that what it means is that everyone needs to get power. So he joined the team from Boston Consulting Group. So he's been around Nigeria, worked with Hess Holding in various capacities as chief of staff to the chairman, director of strategy, and also the CEO of the Tony Elumelu Foundation. He's worked with Rockefeller Foundations in the regional office in Kenya, McKinsey and Company, World Vision in Mauritania. And so he's been around, but more importantly, he's one of our own. Born in Jos, went to school at Hillcrest, went to primary and secondary school, and even a year in University of Jos before he went back to the States. He earned a PhD and 2 masters from Yale, a bachelor's degree also from Calvin College, all in history. And he's the co-founder of AfriOne. And so we welcome you today, Dr. Webe, and we again appreciate everything that you're doing for the continent and for Nigeria. Very much appreciated. The next person in the panel is Mr. Benga Adetoro. He's an investment executive. He's an executive partner with African Capital Alliance, a leading private equity firm in the continent that is Pan-African. And he's been around also in consulting in Accenture, where he was also the head of energy and power. And so, you know all about the investment in this sector, the pipeline, the coming in and going out. So we're expecting to share that experience today. You're welcome to the panel, Mr. Detoro. And the last but not the least at all is our dear Mrs. Titi Marsha, who is a co-founder and director of Tostep Nigeria Limited, an indigenous energy solutions and business consultancy company. Titi has been in this space for a while in engineering, operations, and supply chain, working with top Fortune 100 companies in the US before coming back to Nigeria to start to nurse this ambition of actually helping to solve the problem of energy in Nigeria. She's worked with many small to medium-sized enterprises, and more recently has been doing a lot of work in the North as well. She holds a master's degree in engineering from University of California, Berkeley. Mrs. Marsha, you're welcome. Okay, so with that introduction, our goal today is to brainstorm, to deliberate, to challenge ourselves as a nation on how to overcome the challenges that confront us in the energy sector. And so what we intend to do today is to look at areas that concern the energy supply in the domestic system. So how do we achieve domestic energy sufficiency? We're also going to look at energy transition and what we need to do as a nation, as well as our responsibility in climate stewardship. So those are the things that we're going to be looking at in this segment. For the Q&A session after the very first part, I've invited Olugbenga Ogunbode to coordinate the questions from the Q&A, and we'll be able to take care of that as well before we round up. And so what I intend to do as a way to kind of start this conversation, and I've been kind of looking at some of the work that you've been doing, and I think it would be very inspirational to start from there, to try to get an understanding of how you have been trying to solve this problem. Starting with, we are now starting off with achieving domestic energy sufficiency. What do we need to do? We need a paradigm shift, but what is that shift? In what direction? How? So that's basically the first thing we're going to try to discuss. But before we do that, I kind of present where we are, and so that it becomes the context in which we try to discuss what we're discussing today. And so even though Nigeria is endowed with large fossil and renewable energy resources, the energy consumption per capita in Nigeria is one of the lowest in the world. And I think that you don't have to have the statistics to agree with that. Most Nigerians experientially do agree that we do have a crisis here. Only 60% of Nigerians have access to electricity. And those that actually do have the access, most of them don't have electricity most of the time. They're probably 20% of the time. And so compared with some of the neighboring nations, and so we can't make an excuse. Ghana has more availability and consumption per capita 2 times that of Nigeria. Tunisia 10 times that of Nigeria. South Africa 30 times that of Nigeria. And so because of this situation, most Nigerians would have to try to generate their own power. So the generator business is a very booming business in Nigeria, but it does require foreign exchange to be able to procure these generators. We also need to either use gasoline or diesel to power these generators. That also were important. And so These things constitute drain to our foreign exchange and something that we probably should be able to solve, given the resources that we have. And so we're going to start our discussion first and foremost by basically looking at what we've been doing. And I would like to invite Dr. Nima to kind of give us a little preview on the work that he's been doing with the advanced renewable power within the continent. And if there is any plan for Nigeria, that's where we're going to start. And I'll try to go around the panel because different people are working on different things, as I gleaned from your, some of your profile and incredible things you're doing. And so I think we want to be motivated. People who are outside want to know that there are things that they can truly do in Nigeria without necessarily even involving the government, something that individuals can do. Over to you, Dr.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, George. Well, some of the puzzles are solved, and now it's easy to see. Like electrification and education, obviously, are the obvious things that we have to do. And I have had very many African students, particularly Nigerian students, which are brilliant. And it was always a puzzle to me, how come Africa is so much behind the curve, particularly in electricity? Oh, well, these days, if you don't have electricity, you kind of don't have anything anymore. That's the way system is. Communication, education, internet, all the above. I had to go there and see it for myself and see what's going on. The conclusion for me, of course, is that I looked at the phone. I said, all right, ago, half of the world didn't have phone. Why? Because everybody was waiting for the landline to come to their house. Otherwise, they couldn't have phone conversation. Invention of the phone, mobile phone, will solve the. Today, everybody has a phone, right? Even little kids have phones. The question for us, can we do something like that for the world, particularly, the south of the world, I call it, southern hemisphere, obviously a part of it. How can we electrify that? The solution for us at the end was a mobile power grid similar to a mobile phone, right? Maybe, so we don't, otherwise people wait for another 50 years to have electricity in their homes because they are waiting for transmission line. The research was, how can we somehow eliminate the need for transmission line? Frankly, in other cases, even if that's what, when I visit with people in Africa or speak with them, the presidents or ministers of energy, I said, well, we spend trillions of dollars. I don't know the exact number, probably $10 trillion. But the good news is for you, you don't need anymore. You don't need to do that anymore. Even if you have the money, don't spend on that. At least it's our opinion. That's our research, because the technology exists. Today, you can have economical technology and mobile technology that you transport it to a village of 50 people immediately, almost immediately electrify and give them also electric vehicle very economically. So that's really the conclusion of what we have done. Lots of research in this area. So, I mean, obviously temperature and all the other things, without getting to details of the technical details of what we're talking about. Our focus effort has been really this area we call internally mobile power grid. I mean, some people refer to it as microgrid, some people refer to it as nanogrid, depending on the nature, which is built for communities, is a community. Now you can make a large city to a bunch of communities as well. Now, if we have something that we can transport it economically to everywhere, implement it, commission it, deploy it, test it, and maintain it immediately, that's really, in my opinion, is the only solution that I can see. There's no other solution that I can see visible for, particularly for Africa, that can become electrified. All right. The other question that you're going to ask shortly, also on climates and stuff like that, also comes with the package here. And the point is the system of saving money as well. Saving money as well. The more I think about it, I use the terminology here in the United States. There's no reason to send electricity from Indianapolis to Cleveland. So there's no reason to me that you send electricity from Lagos to Abuja. Why? God has given free stuff. wind, sun, other sources of energy, that everybody has those sources of energy if you can somehow grab it and use it. So that's a simple solution to the problem. Oh, it's not a simple solution. We couldn't really do it 20, 30 years ago. The problem, plus that it was so expensive. Today is a practical. And now, in Nigeria, particularly, as I said at the beginning of my discussion, you have resources. You have lots of brilliant people. You have lots of resources. You have technical people. You are very capable. You have lots of capital in order to implement that. That's why we have been working. Actually, we started with Nigeria. I have several groups we have been working with in Nigeria. The whole concept really started at Nigeria. People came to us. So I'm very confident it's implementable in Nigeria. And on the other side, if when we do that, hopefully when we do that, other things comes with it. Energy, then comes with it electricity, then comes with it the digital economy, the website, education, the healthcare, all kinds of stuff is attached to electricity these days. So really, that's the reason we spend lots of time on Africa, particularly in Nigeria, and currently Senegal, Mauritania, Burkina Faso. We are very active there.
Well, that's interesting, Dr. Nema. Obviously, this is a very exciting technology that most individuals would like to know a little bit more about it. I mean, one question that comes to mind very readily is this 100% solar solution, or is it a hybrid of different types of fuel? Does it still require diesel to be able to use that solution? Of course, the other question is it cost effective to generate power at a micro scale? How does it compare with, if you were to do it on a mega scale? I mean, economic question that most people would like to, have an answer as they explore the technology, basically.
Solar alone will not do the job. How about when there is no sun for a week or 2 weeks or a month, which maybe not happen? So solar without energy storage system, to me, is a totally a meaningless concept, because you call people, say, hey, tonight, sorry, all the refrigeration food is going to go because there is no sun today. There was no sun. So you got to have a storage. And we have wind turbine, the specialized mobile wind turbine. When I'm talking about this system, we're talking about as big as a refrigerator, by the way. We're not talking about those massive wind turbines that you have to have particular trailers carrying them and stuff like that. It's a mobile, is designed for a community. A community is a school is a community, a church is a community. It's not designed, the small communities. That's the whole issue is right now. So you can break big cities to small zones. Scalable, yes, of course, it's scalable. But our system, the way we have designed it, the one we have currently, and we have been extensively testing it. And you mentioned there is no presentation, so I didn't bring the presentation here. But
but you can give us your website so that people can make a reference.
Yeah, it's ARPTECK.com, which is Advanced Renewable Power, TECK.com. And we don't have everything on website either because of confidentiality, some of the stuff that we will be happy to put it on whatever means you need. But this, I wasn't planning to use this as advertising more than just informational. So our conclusion is has to have wind turbine, has to have the solar farm, has to have energy system all combined together. In fact, we also have a genset as a backup system. So there is no human involvement. There is software, we call them the InfiniGrid, means the digital grid is all controlled by the software. There is no much of human involvement in the future. And also diagnostics is done through our InfiniGrid system that we can diagnose everything from here in Indianapolis and say, hey, that battery set or that wind turbine is something is wrong with it. The local joint venture go and people who are technicians go and fix the problem if there is any problem. So in answer to your question, is a very hybrid. I would classify it as very hybrid. It means not just the wind and the solar, also backup generator as default comes with the system, right? Now your second question you're asking as far as cost. I remember, I don't know if Dr. Ahmadi is still the chairman of the Electric Commission in Nigeria or not. I spoke with him personally for quite a while. The number that he gave me at that time was 42 cents American cents per kilowatt hour of energy. Right now, we are really talking about 10 cents or less, 10 cents or less with the complete system. So you're talking about really a different world. And the reason is we don't have to maintain national grid. There is no concept of national grid in our business. Well, if it's there, we can use it. The grid is also existing. Grid is another item on the hybrid portion of the business. That's the easy part. Using the national grid for recharging, that's a very easy part. There's not much really engineering in it. So, but yes, all combination. Economically, for Africa, with all the numbers together, if something is really more than 10 cents per kilowatt hour, it's probably not going to fly. And the concept of having access to electricity is like in the US, we say, oh, people have access to healthcare. That's just a bogus statement, because if you go to the hospital and you have to pay $10,000 in one night, having access is mute. Now, if you have electricity, you have to pay 42 cents per kilowatt hour or 28 cents per kilowatt hour, and people cannot afford it, then that doesn't mean anything. Our focus is primarily on the economic aspect of the program. And then with access makes sense.
Excellent stuff. It's definitely exciting to know that those solutions are available. And I think that many people are probably going to be exploring this after this session. We're going to, move on to talk to other panelists to try to also learn from their experience. I'll be calling upon Dr. Wiebe to, share with us what's going on with ON. Over to you, Dr. Wiebe.
All right, thank you very much. Great to be on this platform. Just a little background also, the platform is called Apostles in the Marketplace. My father was actually a Dutch missionary in Nigeria for 30 years. And his ministry actually focused on something called the Institute of Church and Society. And their entire focus was actually about how Christians in the marketplace can transform Nigeria. So it's great to see that this is happening. So listen, let me just give a little bit of context. I mean, I know many people on here either live in Nigeria or have lived in Nigeria, but we know that the power sector is broken, that it's very bad and all that. But let me just put it in context just to kind of let you know how bad it really is. So first of all, Nigeria is the energy access poverty capital in the world. We have more people off grid than any other country, even India, more than India. There are 90 million Nigerians who have no access to the grid, and another 30 million Nigerians who have less than 4 hours of power a day, which we call bad grid. So that's 120 million people. So twice the population of the United Kingdom who do not get adequate power. And as we know, the remaining 80 million Nigerians are also not properly served. So everyone is affected. We have roughly 195,000 megawatt gap on our grid system. If you just want us to be at the same sort of level as South Africa, where you have roughly 1 million people have about 1,000 megawatts. So it's a massive gap that would cost about $200 billion to fix if we use kind of the old model of the grid, which, as the previous panelists indicated, is sort of outdated, and it really isn't where we need to go. But that is the number that we would need to fix that. Now, Nigerians are obviously resilient, and we have come to use very widely, standalone diesel and petrol generators, which are now basically powering the country, in every corner. And so just to put it in context, Lagos gets about 700 megawatts from the grid, and 18,000 megawatts are generated by standalone generators. So it's just ridiculous, and it's expensive, it's bad for the environment, it's noisy, it's dangerous, everything else. So there's at least 20 million generators operating every day in Nigeria. Nigerians spend about $12 billion a year operating these generators, and 10 billion of that is actually the diesel that we use. So only 2 billion is actually buying the equipment, 10 billion is actually fueling it. And so that's actually really where the problem is. That $10 billion that goes to buying and distributing the diesel is where we have the problem. And as long as that is there, nobody is going to fix the power sector, because everybody is sharing that money. So that's really the reason why our power sector is broken. So now, what are we doing? So I run a fund called All On. It's funded by Shell, and we are an impact investor focused on investing in Nigerian energy access businesses. We now have 31 investees, so we have the largest portfolio of energy access businesses in the country, and 25 of them are indigenous businesses, and the others are international businesses that have come into the Nigerian market. We invest in solar home systems, solar energy systems, mini grids, cold storage, battery as a service, and we even invest in component manufacturing. So we have one investee that actually manufactures solar panels in Lagos. We have another investee that manufactures inverters in Enugu and so on. And so our approach to this is, look, you know, the grid is broken, the grid is overregulated, the tariffs are overregulated, and fixing the grid is just really too expensive and outdated. So our focus is completely off grid, and we're basically providing services where Nigerians at the household level, at the SME level and up, can basically make a choice and access affordable, clean electricity to basically empower them to, you know, improve their health outcomes, education outcomes, competitiveness, improve their businesses, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, we're out there doing that. And it's great to see that in the last 3 to 4 years, solar and clean energy and off-grid and so on has become more and more something that people are aware of and are open to. I was just in Abuja, for example. The Ministry of Works and Housing is now on a 2 megawatt solar and battery backup system. You have malls in Abuja that are on solar. You have universities in Nigeria that are being taken off the grid and being put on solar and gas. And so this is happening, you know, household by household, community by community, town by town, and sort of industry by industry. And it's really, you know, starting to take off in a way that within 2 or 3 years, I think we're going to really, really see a massive difference in the sector.
Wow, that's great. Very exciting. And so obviously this is being able to enable a lot of entrepreneurs to be able to go into this area. You have been able to deploy probably quite a bit already, to be able to enable about 30 people. What level of funding is still available for those who would like to go into this area?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty big war chest, and so
Okay.
we're going to be investing for the next 7 to 10 years,
Wow.
and our limitation is not capital. Our limitation is just time to make deals happen. And
Great.
we also don't have a limitation on pipeline. I mean, if the number of, you know, innovative businesses that are being started and growing either in Nigeria or coming into the market is, we can't keep up. So our pipeline is, you know, longer than we can manage, and it's just a matter of getting deals done and then getting houses and businesses and so on connected.
Thanks. Okay, let's talk to Titi, who has also been doing some stuff around the solar off-grid power solution. Could you share with us some of the stuff, projects you've done, some that are still on the pipeline?
Yes, thank you. I've been in the renewable space starting in the US about 15 years ago, and then in Nigeria in 2009 when I moved home and co-founded TopStep Limited. And TopStep focuses on energy solutions, renewable energy solutions, and energy efficiency. So those are all things that we balance and we look at all times in different projects that we work on. We focus on productive use of power. So we've been working in the urban, but also the rural spaces since about 2011, 2012 now, and partnering with agriculture and farmers across the northern parts of Nigeria to bring solutions that can help them out. So for example, one of the major things that we've been working on is trying to empower the farmers through the use of solar powered milling equipment. So we implemented some as far back as 2014 and have continued to implement and roll out this solution across many different communities in northern and southeast Nigeria as well. And what we do, we go beyond this. We go beyond just selling you a piece of equipment. We believe that by taking a farmer who historically is just growing corn or growing sorghum and teaching him how to be a businessman and being able to be an agro processor. We're actually empowering him, we're bringing additional revenue to him and his family, and we're impacting those communities in which we're partnering. So in addition to bringing the solar equipment to the communities, we also have a optimization desk, and we work with the farmers on marketing, entrepreneurship, even packaging for the final product and access to markets, figuring out where they're actually going to sell their final products, be it here in Nigeria or exporting it outside of Nigeria. And we've had great success in working with multiple cooperatives of farmers across the northern part of Nigeria, particularly with the maize and with the sorghum production over the last few years. And in addition to that, we've also worked with other communities in the Northeast and in the South and Southeast as well. We probably have over 200 plus different installations now and 200 plus different communities that we've touched in some form or fashion. So at least 20 to 22 states of the Federation we've been working in, and there's so much opportunity out there. There's so many communities in need of solutions, in need of energy, as has been stated by Dr. Nema and Dr. Bo. And so we are doing our part, one community at a time, to make this impact, but not just through the use of energy, but through empowering those communities and working with the farmers and other productive youth to bring about additional help. Additionally, we also do a lot of work in the energy efficiency space. I don't know how much we'll get into that in this today, but we also believe that it's very important not only to give access to power, but also to teach people how to use that power efficiently. And so we do a lot of work with data analytics and energy efficiency audits, and working with those people to learn how best to use provided to them.
Yeah, I think.
So I think.
Okay.
So I think with a lot, there's so much opportunity in this space, and I think one of the key things that we are also doing is we need to look at the energy mix, and we can't continue to be reliant on the fossil fuels that have historically been the major contributor. We know about 88% of all energy generated today is generated from fossil fuels, and maybe about 12% or so from the hydroelectric dams around the country. But this is something that needs to continue to change. We need to bring in the other renewables, such as solar, wind, even tidal and wave, and geothermal into the process and into the mix to balance out here in Nigeria. And both gentlemen earlier talked about the antiquity of the transmission line and the national grid, and looking at the distributive model and generating and using the power in the same location. We can't continue to move power thousands of kilometers away from Lagos to Kaduna, for example, or from Edo to Kaduna. We need to make the power in and around the people that are going to be using that power.
That's it. That's very interesting.
So I'm very happy to be here today, and I look forward to much more conversation in the next hour around energy and the opportunities that we have here.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. I think those are the kind of solutions we would like to share on this platform, because one, it motivates people, but also people know where to look if they are looking for a true solution to their power problem. One question that I have in mind, though, is regarding, I know that some communities may not be able to afford lump sum payment. Do you have a payment plan for some of these projects?
We've had to get creative with some of the financing solutions. As you stated, these solutions are not cheap. So we've done a number of different financing or leasing solutions over time. We also have tried to work with the local banks, the commercial banks, and other financing organizations to put together new solutions, new products that can actually be used within this space. Because we have a pipeline as well of so many people that would like to have access to these types of products, but they too are stuck because they need financing. So I think you hit on a very key area that also needs to be addressed. And I think there's some work that has happened in this space maybe in the last 3 years, but I think there's a lot of additional opportunities to work with financing institutions, investment houses, and figure out how we can bring the funding to the lowest levels of the organization of the country, who are the people that really need this, these solutions. And in the case of the work that we do, it's productive use. So these are businesses who have legitimate opportunities to increase their revenue or even create revenue where it never existed before. And so a business case could be had by them to take that loan or take that debt in order to turn that additional revenue.
Excellent stuff. I'm going to move on to Benga to kind of discuss what African Capital Alliance have been doing with regards to power. I know you lead the energy investments. I'm sure that a lot of these come to your table. Do you have investments in power? And what's your perspective with regards to the trend? Over to you.
Thank you very much, OJ, and it's a pleasure to be here with the group. You know, as you know, the Apostles in the Marketplace is a group that I have very close to the heart, and I really do welcome the opportunity to be part of this. Kudos to Pastor John and all the leaders that have provided this platform. And I look forward to you know, being more visible on this platform. So back to the question, OJ, I think for ACA, for those that don't know us, we are a private equity. You know, we like to see ourselves as having pioneered private equity in Nigeria, and we've had over 20 years of history investing across different market cycles and across different sectors. So even though we have, you know, Nigeria is a very important market for us, but we obviously have invest across the region. We've got, over the years, we've raised different funds. Some have been general private equity funds. We also have a real estate fund. But in terms of sectors, we focused on a number of sectors where we've seen what I call private equity fundamentals. So in other words, these are sectors that we believe can deliver attractive returns. The energy sector is an important part of that chain. And I would say that we have a demonstrable track record in that energy space. Over the last 23 years, we've invested significant capital. In the upstream, we have investments in exploration and production. In midstream, processing, transporting, and storing of gas, we have investments. And also in the downstream sector, we have investments. In the services sector, we have investments. I would say that for the power sector, our role has been more of what I would call, so over the years, even though we like the sector, we've tried to do things in the sector, but I think just giving some of the hurdles that have been discussed across the table already, the issues around bankability of projects has been a big question. So we have focused the last few years leveraging some of our, if you want to call them, international financing institutions or development financing institutions that have very good access not only to government, but also to the regulator, you know, just in terms of advocacy. So we have played our own part in giving, 2 cents, our own 2 cents advice to say, look, what do we think you can do differently in the sector to attract investment? I think Weber painted a very, very, if you want to call it, alarming picture, which is very true, that there is a significant gap between demand and supply. Indeed, Nigeria probably on a per capita basis has the lowest consumption of power. Today, we are generating, depending on who you talk to, but let's assume for the sake of this conversation, we're doing 5,000 megawatts, or let's keep it simple, we're doing 5 gigawatts of power, right? Again, depending on who you talk to, some believe that we require 100 gigawatts of power yesterday to power Nigeria. Now, so I'm not talking about today, I'm not talking about tomorrow. If you're going to talk about tomorrow, what we need, you need to factor many things into consideration. One is our population growth. So at 100, or again, to make it simple, 200 million people, we're growing at about 3% every year. So it means that every year we're adding, 6 million people every year, right, to the population. Each of those people, when you provide them with power, so if you take me as an example, right, I have maybe a home, I have maybe lighting, I've got air conditioning, and because of the acute shortage of power, I've held back in terms of my usage. So when you then make it available to me, right, you're likely to see that a lot more people, what we call latent demand, will show up. So a lot of people, so what we're dealing with right now, even the 100 gigawatts, right, is likely suppressed demand, right? So if you look at the sums of money we're talking about, using the rule of thumb, where people believe we require close to $100 billion of investments, to close the gap. Now, if you take that number, you would realize that we're talking about powering the base load, right? The base load, If you require $100 billion, one of the things we've made clear to government is, and also just to other stakeholders that have cared to listen, is government does not have the balance sheet to deliver those kinds of money, right? We are, thank God for Nigeria, but clearly it would be nice to augment, any sort of public sector support, to have the private sector play a very, very important role in making that happen. And in making that happen, I think, I think it was Titi that spoke about, and other, I think a number of other panelists have spoken about how we think about our energy policy. I know we'll probably come to it in a minute or shortly, but clearly Nigeria needs to rethink its energy policy and shouldn't be sort of reactively going with what the world is going with, but think about its own unique situation and have a tailor-made energy policy, and think about the energy mix that will help deliver the sort of energy we require to power the economy. The other thing we've sort of, in terms of advocacy, is essentially solving. So the way we've spoken to government is, look, it's good to have a lot of off-grid solutions, but you would realize that, if you look at it today, we've seen a lot of projects that are looking to deploy $50 million, $10 million, $100 million, trying to do some off-grid solutions. When you look at the gap that I described earlier on, they are, they support, it's good support, but it would still be very good. It would be very, very nice to solve the grid, right? To solve the broken grid in a manner that whatever people are then doing complements that grid sufficiently, and then provides power both to the rural areas where I think it was Dr. Dr. Neyman, I was talking about how, you know, the mobile platforms can be used to drive rural, you know, there's technology today that can be used, that can be leveraged to ensure that the unreached population can be reached. So all of that is great, but we still think that fixing the grid is an important part of that solution. And we also think that, you know, the regulatory oversight and performance management in the sector needs to be strengthened. I think, you know, NERC has done creditably well, but in order to have a system that allows for a decentralized, so again, many of the panelists have already spoken about how it doesn't make too much sense to run a highly centralized structure where you're wielding power across very wide, I mean, I'm not a power expert, but certainly I do remember that, you know, I think there's even science to suggest that you would lose a lot of those electrons as you try to send them over distances. So clearly it makes sense to have a decentralized structure, but that then means that the regulatory framework needs to be stronger and obviously must be able to cater for all of that. I think, you know, the other thing really is for us is the quality of sponsors, if you like, in the sector. You know, and if I'm to break that down a little bit more, we think that you know, the sector in terms of human capacity requires significant augmentation. I think people have underestimated this. You know, we focused a lot, you hear a lot of things around, oh yes, like I've just said now, you know, we need $100 billion, we need 100 gigawatts of power, and so on and so forth. But every time, you know, you have to then reflect to think that the sector has been broken for 40 decades, four decades, right? 4 decades, 40 years. In those 40 years, when the state-owned monopoly sort of failed, if you like, you know, to deliver, what has happened is we've then had a gap in human resources, right? You know, for the sector to work, you need engineers that are well-trained, you need technicians that are well-trained. For those, I mean, Weber was speaking about how we've become experts, you know, talking about our resilience, and it is true, we're very resilient, but if you speak to the average Nigerian, they will tell you the horror stories of dealing with their repairers, right? So, you know, because we don't have the technical skills anymore, so they can't even fix a simple 20 kVA or 20 kilowatt a generator, right? Talk less of talking about something at scale. So I think that that human capacity gap needs to be closed. So again, if you're talking about moving from 5 megawatts to 5,000 megawatts or 5 gigawatts to 100 gigawatts, the number of people and the quality of those people that you require is mind-boggling, actually, when you think about it. And yet we need to do it, right? We need to solve that problem. So we need to, and these are some of the questions and suggestions that we've been working with a number of industry players, speaking with the regulators to ensure that at least the enabling environment that can help us as investors deploy capital is there for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Expo. Now, I think it's clear that we're going to require a hybrid solution to be able to solve the power problem, which is we have to fix the grid, and we have to also pursue the non-grid solutions. But what I was thinking is about the bankability of projects. How can these projects become bankable? What needs to be put in place to make sure that investors can actually go into the grid solution as well and be successful? And we also want the grid solution to be effective, because I mean, what we've articulated is massive, is actually mind-blowing. I don't even know how to wrap my mind around the requirement to actually power 200 million people when at this point we haven't even started. And so the point from your own point of view, because this is really your area, is why are investment capital not going to the great solution at this point, and what needs to be done to make sure that that happens?
Okay, thank you very much. I think, the literature is exhaustive around the problems, but let me focus on the solutions. So essentially right now, we have a systemic problem where the value chain, right from the fuel to the generation, to the transmission, and then to the distribution is broken, right? And essentially, the overall health of that sector, of that chain, is questionable. So, or put in another way, the system is not generating enough value for all players in the sector to meet their expected returns, right? To sort of to stay whole, and so there is a hole that is being generated, and that hole is growing. That hole, government has made some attempts in the last few years to plug the hole. However, because if you want to call it the pricing, the government has
cost reflective pricing.
Cost reflectivity of the sector has is not yet there. Okay. So I think we were talking about how, I think it was Dr. Nima talking about pricing, per kilowatt hour. I think there certainly needs to be a significant change from where we are to ensure that the pricing for power in Nigeria is cost reflective. In addition to that, in addition to just solving the pricing issue, you need track record on that pricing. So you would imagine if today, imagine if I were someone that has been owing money over the last few years, and then I decide that today I'm going to be good. Before people believe me, right, they're going to wait a bit to be sure that my credit worthiness is there. So the pricing regime requires a track record. And in our view, before people will jump in properly, maybe 3 to 5 years, right? And in that time frame, it will be beneficial for government to sort of provide guarantees, right, to backstop any shortfalls that you might have in that period of time, to say, look, even though we fix the pricing issue and we don't think there will be a shortfall, if there ever was anything, just see me as the backstop, right? I, as government, will ensure that in this time frame, right, which is, if you call it a transitioning phase, to say, look, before you guys believe me, let's provide some guarantees to help you. I think that would be helpful. I think the national grid, the issue of the national grid should be fixed. The issue of the fuel, right? Again, if we're talking about renewables, what is the pricing framework? If we're talking about gas, do we have gas? Are the upstream suppliers of gas, are they meeting their own expected return levels, right? So if, for example, as a gas provider, I'm looking for 15% IR return on my investment, and today I'm only seeing 5% or even negative, I'm unlikely to deploy more money into bringing out more gas. So I think, again, that needs to be fixed.
Thank you very much. We need to, because of time, we need to touch on the national energy transition. What must we do? I'd like to pose that question to Dr. Wiebe. The whole world is generally moving in a certain direction right now. As a nation, what must we do to be sure that, one, we don't leave a lot of resources behind that have no value, two, that we're not caught pants down? Please, we're running out of time, so if you could do in 2 minutes.
We're running out of time for the energy transition or for this panel?
No, for the for
Okay.
the panel.
So look, I know you said 2 minutes, but I'm going to really try and cram the bit in here. So look, just a quick follow-up on what Benga was saying and what you were asking about the grid and so on. There's a lot of, there's exciting work happening right now where on-grid and off-grid is coming together in what is called franchises. And so there's a new regulation that allows distribution companies to partner with third-party companies, usually off-grid, mini-grid providers and so on, that they actually take ownership of a certain area and then generate power on site, use the distribution infrastructure, and then the third party does all the collections as well. So it's actually maybe the solution that will fix the power problem in Nigeria at scale, because then you can do it 20, 30 megawatts at a time without facing the issues of the grid and low tariffs, but also, you know, it's big enough that you're not spending, you're not needing to do 10,000 mini grids to make a difference. So that's just something to be aware of. In terms of the energy transition, look, I would say that the oil and gas industry is very well aware of what's happening. The major IOCs, I mean, I'm part of Shell. Look what we're doing. Other IOCs, well, maybe not the American ones, but the other ones are also doing this very much and are very cognizant of the fact that they, in Nigeria and their business globally, need to move away from oil and gas to other energy sources. Local Nigerian energy companies are also doing the same thing. Many of them, Seplat, others are already starting solar divisions. So we're seeing that happening. But I think the solution for Nigeria is not going to be a fully renewable energy. We can't use renewables to power all of Nigeria when we have all the gas resources we do. We have to use gas and renewables in a combination to get rid of, at least initially, all the diesel generation, and then we can figure out how to get cleaner from there. In terms of the government, the government, this is one of the areas that the Buhari administration has actually done very well, is the whole area of off-grid energy and encouraging the use of renewables. It's probably one of the few areas that they've been consistent and very strong and moving in one direction as almost as one. And so that's something that's very positive. And so, like I said at the beginning, there's, even big government agencies are now moving to solar and cutting off the generators. And they're encouraging this, around the nation with different programs, funding from the World Bank that they're using to subsidize private companies, et cetera. There's a lot of good stuff going on. But I think as a nation, there still isn't that understanding that the energy transition also means that at some point we will make no money from oil and gas anymore. And I think that's the part that really the government hasn't come to terms with. And it's almost as if the feeling is, look, that's several administrations from now. So, Nubiar Wahala, let's leave it for now. So while there is a good focus on and a sustained focus on renewables and off-grid, in terms of like a really national strategy of energy transition that also transitions the Nigerian economy away from oil and gas, is not yet happening.
And we need to start to think about that. We need to start to think about that. I'm going to move just one last question because I've been asked to close. And Titi, what's your thoughts on what we must do regarding the climate stewardship? We are obviously part of the Paris Accord. I checked, and Nigeria was the 146th nation that signed it. But I'm not entirely sure how, what efforts we're making to make sure that we are a responsible partner. I just want you to kind of articulate what must the government do to make sure that it's not just signing a piece of paper, but actually we do recognize the problems that face us with regards to global warming.
Yeah, I think that's a it's a good step that we've signed and we're part of the Paris Accord, but like many things here in Nigeria, we don't know how to implement, what to actually do. And I think that's a key step that needs to happen as part of our own commitment to catch up, because we're working in climate change, climate adaptation, and making it a big part of who we are and our everyday lives. I remember 15, 20 years ago in the US, I worked for organizations that were already talking about carbon footprints, and they were very concerned about what their carbon footprint was and what their manufacturing facilities looked like. And that was 15, 20 years ago. I don't think even today we're talking about those kind of things in Nigeria. And so putting together some firm policy that's backed by real plans, real penalties to the organizations who are probably the worst, the contributors to this carbon emissions issue, I think is very, very important. Be it the manufacturing facilities or oil and gas companies, everybody needs to look inwards and contribute towards this. Even at the individual level, I think there's some incentives that the government needs to put into place so that even the individuals start to consider themselves part of this. I mean, think many, many years ago about the rebate programs that were put in place by the US government to encourage people to buy energy efficient solutions and energy efficient refrigerators and things like that. And those are all things that I think need to be considered within the Nigerian place, because we've talked in the last hour talking about access to energy and generating energy for people to use. But like I mentioned in my own introduction, as soon as we have the energy, I think Benga mentioned this as well, as soon as we have the energy, people are going to use it and we're going to be out of energy again. So having this thought around how do we use the energy efficiency, how do we make sure that we're considering climate and our carbon emission and carbon footprint in each and everything that we do, I think is also a major part, both at the government, the industry, and then the individual level here in Nigeria. So I think there has to be policy that's put into place, strategies that's put into place, and it needs to touch all three of those levels to be successful.
Thank you so much. Just to quickly wrap up, we've talked about the upgrade solutions, and we've talked about what needs to be done to fix the grid, but also the franchising, which is going on right now. And I think that the upgrade and the grid solutions have to come together to effectively provide for the power requirement of most of the cities and also the rural areas. We also talked about the energy transition. I think the government probably need to be conscious of the fact that once in the rest of the world have moved on, because oil is a spot market commodity, the price of oil is going to be very low. And so if you haven't found other ways of sustaining your economy, you are going to be stranded. I think that's clearly the message, but also the fact that there is also an opportunity for acceleration of the resources. In terms of the policies that we put together, we need to be in a place where we can expand the industry, make sure that we get the most value now that there is value to be obtained. And finally, of course, we are responsible partners in the global stewardship of the climate. We have to take measures to punish companies that continue to, emit a whole lot of carbon. The oil and gas is one of them. The flaring continuing. Some of the industries are also part of them. But we need to start to also think about agriculture as well. But I believe that the government would have to incentivize and be able to punish erring entities to be able to stop, a lot of this, what is going on right now, which doesn't contribute to the overall vision of the Paris Accord. And with that, I'd like to thank all the panelists. We've been asked to close. I think we're going to continue the discussions because there's so much more to discuss. We didn't get to the Q&A, but we'll try to respond to all the Q&A questions offline as we close this segment of the workshop today. Thank you very much, Dr. Nema. Thank you, Benga. Thank you, Dr. Webe. And thank you, Mrs. Marshall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
Yes.
Thank you all. Thanks for the session.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oje Ozo. And thank you for thanking the panel. It's been an awesome outing. And I'll tell you that I listened personally attentively, and I picked a lot of takeaways. I want to commend you, Mr. Boa, the awesome job you're doing with the malls and the universities being taken out of the grid. I believe strongly that there's hope for us. Wenga, awesome intervention. I like the things you said about enabling entrepreneurs express their passion. I am an entrepreneur myself, an MSME for that matter. We need to get houses and businesses connected. I totally agree with you. Okay, there is a significant gap between demand and supply, Wenga, you too. And then I like the fact that, Titi, you focused on what we have done in the past 1 hour, trying to create access to affordable energy, if I got you right. It's not going to work. 12 billion naira a year, generating only 18,000 megawatts of energy from generators and other sources. That is totally unsustainable and is against the SDG goals on goal 12 on sustainable consumption and production. With 1 million people in South Africa accessing 1,000 megawatts and Lagos getting only 700 megawatts of power, it will make sense. And we cannot have a country that generates between 7,000 and 7,500 megawatts for 208 million people, when South Africa, with about 55 million people, gets over 45,000 megawatts. I think it speaks to itself that this panel discussion has come at a time when it is due time to have it. I believe strongly that there's future and a hope. And at this juncture, without spending more time analyzing what you've already analyzed, just to thank you, to say that thank you for kickstarting this discussion and for taking it as far as it took